Harry's wife, zero talent. Harry's wife is very much circling the drain now. For a long time, people have been describing her as a charlatan, a grifter. But mainly those voices came from individuals on social media, the creators of videos on YouTube, people writing in blogs. But then there were a few amongst the mainstream that started to call out her behaviours. Piers Morgan, most notable of them, Meghan Kelly, and then steadily there has become an increasing number of individuals that recognise that there was something not right about the way that she behaves. One day, when time allows, I will create a compendium of all of the indicators. I've done many, of course, when I first assessed her to be a narcissist in A Very Royal Narcissist Part 1. And of course, through all the many videos that I've made about Harry's wife, I've highlighted again and again and again instances of her narcissism in action. But it would be quite useful to have a compendium of the narcissistic manipulations that she has engaged in. What you have is an individual who is now being exposed not only for the fact that she's a narcissist, but also that she's a narcissist with no talent. And this time, it's the turn of The Guardian to join in. Stuart Heritage writes, "Terrible ideas, tedious shows, zero talent." From Prince Harry's deluded plan to interview Putin to a Harry's Wife podcast so insufferable Taylor Swift refused to appear, it's been one disaster after another. No wonder they've been canned. Now, hitherto, people kind of gave them a chance. And then it was a case of, well, we'll judge them on their output. And of course, when Archetypes came along, it was roundly ridiculed as being a self-indulgent load of nonsense. With Harry and Harry's wife, people shook their heads again at the victim mentality that was exhibited. But all people have done is assess them based upon what they themselves have done. Nobody's made anything up. It's simply they have become to be hoisted by their own petard, which of course provides for many people a degree of satisfaction. Mr. Heritage writes, by and large, if there is one thing that the world absolutely does not need any more of, it's podcasts. And yet, the death of Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex Spotify deal, as public and as messy as it was, has by all accounts deprived us of an absolute corker. Last week, Bloomberg reported that one podcast idea seriously mooted by Harry was to make an entire series about childhood trauma. Not just his own trauma, because he has obviously got enough mileage out of that elsewhere, but the trauma of a group best described as world baddies. As Bloomberg wrote, the concept of the show was as follows. Harry would interview a procession of controversial guests such as Vladimir Putin, Mark Zuckerberg and Donald Trump about their early formative years and how those experiences resulted in the adults they are today. This is the best idea in all of history, convincing a fleet of powerful and dangerous men to abandon every instinct that brought them to power in the first place so that they can discuss how sad they are about never being hugged by their fathers, with Prince Harry for a podcast. Sadly, perhaps because Vladimir Putin has been too busy threatening the world with nuclear annihilation to discuss how badly he got bullied at school, the project came to naught. Of course, it was inevitable that Harry's bad ideas would eventually leak to the press. After Spotify executive Bill Simmons teased some of them on air recently, labelling Harry and Harry's wife as a pair of fucking grifters. Simmons said, I have got to get drunk one night and tell the story of the Zoom I had with Harry to try and help him with the podcast idea. It's one of my best stories. Fuck them, the grifters. The tragedy is, though, that the news of these terrible ideas got lost in the din of other people rushing to trash the couple. Now, pausing there, why is it that people are rushing to trash them? Because they're disliked. because people see them as grifters, because people see it's about time that they got their comeuppance. As well as Simmons, Jeremy Zimmer, chief executive of the United Talent Agency, mentioned the collapse of the deal during an advertising festival in Cannes, saying, turns out Harry's wife was not a great audio talent or necessarily any kind of talent. Taylor Swift was apparently unimpressed enough at Harry's wife's Archetypes podcast that she reportedly turned down a personal invitation to appear on the show. That will, of course, significant wounding to Harry's wife. And then, just to heap even more on top, Netflix is apparently getting ready to give Harry and Harry's wife the chop, refusing to pay them tens of millions of dollars, wounding, loss of residual benefit, unless they come up with a hit as successful as their recent 6-part documentary. Which they won't, presumably because that documentary was literally the sum total of their entire lives. Also, it doesn't help that their other ideas don't sound particularly compelling. One is a reimagining of Great Expectations, where Miss Havisham is now a strong woman living in a patriarchal society, and another is described as Emily in Paris, but about a man. Their current woes, it seems, come from giving up the good stuff too early. As an entity, Harry and Harry's wife are only interesting for as long as they can destabilise the monarchy. Their Oprah interview did that. Their documentary did that. Harry's book Spare did that. Archetypes did not do that, and as such was roughly as interesting as listening to changing room chatter in the world's most insufferable yoga studio. As such, it is increasingly clear that only fumes are left in the tank. It might be time for Harry and Harry's wife to go away for a while and work out who they actually want to be now. Pausing there, naturally, many of you would be delighted if they went away, but it isn't going to happen. They're not able to work out who they actually want to be because Harry's wife doesn't know, and she's the one that always takes the lead. She already believes she knows what she is. She thinks that she is whatever today requires her to be because her narcissism dictates who she is. Mr. Heritage ends by saying, this isn't to say that we should write them off, of course. The Duchess of Sussex has signed with a talent agency, and depending on who you listen to, either wants to revive her blog as a Goop-style wellness hub or become US president. Any of these ventures might boost the family coffers, something that would give Harry a bit more freedom to go and chase down Putin for that interview. The Guardian, a left-leaning publication, pulling no punches in the condemnation of their terrible ideas, tedious shows, and zero talent. Harry and Harry's wife's Trainwreck podcast career. Sticking the knife in, as so many others have done. Highlighting once again their lack of talent. And this is the problem for Harry's wife, that when she fails, not only is the failure itself that causes a problem for her, but then the world talks about her failure, amping up the problems of the threat to control. And she isn't up to the job of dealing with that. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.